So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about Gen X. Can they retire? Those are those people ages about 45 to 60. So here's some of the here's some of the headwinds, right? So insufficient savings. I think that's just been, I don't care what generation you are, a lot of people landed that, right? But I do believe that the Gen Xers might be the worst savers. They've always been kind of the keep up with the Joneses type of mentality. They grew up with MTV and MTV Cribs and you name it, man. Like we have been, Derek, you and I have kind of fallen that 45 age range. So that's what I remember. It's like, hey man, that was when Ferraris and Lambos and big houses and Cristal and all this stuff was becoming a fad, right? A thing. Healthcare costs. I would say that the cost of inflation on healthcare is a lot higher than nearly everything else around us. Social Security uncertainty. Will it be there for us? Longevity, outliving your savings. Yes, there is advancements in medical technology, and we could be living longer. That is something that could be happening, right? Market volatility. Market is more volatile, I would say, than it ever has been, ever. Just constantly. I mean, Trump rolled out his tariffs. Market fell. It was down 8% going into it, fell another 10%, and 6 weeks later, we're at all-time highs again. An incredible rebound. So can we navigate through volatility? Debt. Again, that kind of goes into insufficient savings because we're racking up debt because we're trying to be ballers out there, I guess. I don't know. And then job security. Well, yeah. I mean, AI. Going to take your job. They took our jobs from South Park, right? I don't know. But job security is always a concern. And, companies are always trying to make things more efficient. And, AI is developing in front of us. So is that, these are all headwinds. So I kind of want to spin it and make it what are the tailwinds for everybody? Is there any headwinds that you can think of, Derek, or
any headwind?
Like I talked about all the concerns. Is there any that you'd like to add or?
Yeah, I think honestly, before really thinking about this very much, I didn't think it was going to be this big of a problem. But I mean, you outlined it pretty well there. In some of these surveys I've been looking at, Gen X, 70% of them think they will retire later than expected. Yeah, I found that to be a huge number. So they kind of know that early retirement isn't on the horizon for them.
Yeah.
Gen X has gotten sandwiched in between a lot. Whether it's kind of starting their career, you got the decade of no returns, right, between 2010-ish, with 200-year floods in there in the dot-com bubble and the housing crisis. So, a lot to endure for sure. At the same point in time, you do have to acknowledge that they've also, hopefully, taken advantage of the markets between 2010 and now.
Yeah.
So that's been a pretty nice run.
Well, I think that's why the baby boomers are in such a good spot right now. Going into retirement, their portfolios have 2 to 3x'd.
Yep.
They're launched right into retirement. So good for them.
Yeah, I was. You actually saw me the other night finishing my CE for my life insurance license.
Yeah.
And one of the only things I learned in that process was that 70% of the wealth is controlled by people 55 and older.
Yeah.
70%.
100%.
So that is a huge number. So that's something the Gen X has to overcome.
That's my biggest. That's what I was going to end with. You stole my
Nope.
thunder a little bit, but yeah, we'll get to that. So let's talk about the positive. So
Yep.
you are in your peak earning years. What does that mean? You should be able to save more and pay off debt, right? So we talked about the insufficient savings, debt. This is your peak earning years. It's not. As an American, most people fall into this rut of, hey, I'm making more money. Now I can afford that, or I can afford this. And it's not like, hey, I'm going to save more. I'm going to pay that off. It's more, it's like, what can I buy now?
Right.
Unfortunately, that's just the American way. But we need to recognize that peak earning years are right now. Social Security, will it be there? Well, I say yes, it will be there. Why? Because the way it's structured right now, 75% of payroll tax pays Social Security recipients. Now, the other 25%, that comes from a trust fund that's supposed to run out in less than a decade, right? The number keeps on moving, this, that, and the other. Well, I mean, maybe we get a little bit less, but you're going to rely on the working class like everyone else. But at the end of the day, the Congress kicks the can down the road as much as possible. There will be a solution for Social Security, and it's probably going to be more taxes.
Yep.
Somewhere, somehow, some way. That's it. I mean, I don't know how else to sum that up. I'll just cut to the point. They're just going to raise taxes to cover that deficit, right? But you also, I think the most people receiving Social Security are, baby boomers. And within 2 decades, those people will be falling off the payroll. I don't want to say it that way, but like they will pass on,
Yep.
right? And there will be, yes, more people to fill those voids, but not as much, not as many, right? Mm-hmm. So there's more financial tools for us today than there ever was for anybody.
Yep.
We have, obviously, 401ks. Those have been around a long time, IRAs. But HSAs is another idea, right? So we have more financial tools for diversification for the different things coming up in, the future. So rising healthcare costs, good. I can start saving for that now in another bucket of money, the HSA. We can also, when it comes to like saving more, we got the catch-up provisions in the 401k and the IRA. So we can force feed our retirement in the tune of, an additional $7,500 for 401ks and $1,000 for IRAs, right? So again, you have to be disciplined. You need to understand that you need to save and you need to do it,
Yep.
right? You need to be disciplined. Longevity, yes, we are designed. We might be living longer. That means we can work longer. I think you brought that up. Is like, hey, most people could be working longer, and that's the unfortunate fact that yes, that is maybe what some people are going to have to do. Technology might be eliminating jobs, but it also can help us with financial planning, right? We can use the technology to help us figure out how much to save, how long to work. How I can rattle off 10 things that a financial plan can tell us. Education is rampant. You can learn about anything you want, right, from anybody you want. Tax planning. If you're a CPA today and you retired I'm worried about the future CPAs. I do believe that AI, like there's tools in our firm and then like that I know are available to financial planners where you take somebody's tax return, you scan it, put it in the software, and it comes up with like 10 tax planning strategies, right? I mean, you don't have to like think about it. It'll tell you generally what to do. Now, does all of them work? No, because everyone's situation is a little bit different. And then budgeting, right? Making sure we're spending enough money. And then we have the gene pool, right? That like what you just said. People are... it's hard to narrow in this number because I was looking it up. But over the next 2 decades, the baby boomers are supposed to, as they pass on, they're going to pass on their wealth too, and it's in the tune between $30 to $50 trillion. And I call this the gene pool lottery. Maybe your heirs are rich, or maybe they're not. So if they're rich, then you're okay. If they're not, then you might need to work longer.
Yep.
But I think that's just life in general, right? So what do you? I just spoke a lot, dude. These are all the tailwinds. These are all the positives that I can think of for Gen Xers to like hang their hat on and dial in. Thoughts?
Yep. I think you covered it all pretty well there. I do think you kind of inadvertently hit the nail on the head there. The Gen Xers are, they've been brought up to, aspire to certain material things, which has caused them to save less, I think. Rack up debt, that didn't used to be a huge problem. Making you mentioned all the tools there. The tools are there to make smart financial decisions. I just don't think it's happening yet across the board. There's also a lot more pressure on, getting a lot of that stuff, from, society, from your own family sometimes, kids pressuring for this and that and the other. So it's definitely a balance. It's definitely kind of like a sandwich generation for sure. But based on the age ranges of Gen X, there's still a lot of time to kind of turn around some of the pessimistic numbers. But yeah, it really comes down to all the things that we always talk about. Saving into the right spots, having a plan. Gen X will catch up. But it's not the prettiest picture right now, I'd say.
No, and you know what? I'm like, think about this if you're a Gen Xer too. Like, you're gritty. You're a gritty, pretty productive, hardworking person. Mm-hmm. And it comes from the baby boomers because they were so hard on, like, get out of the house, go get a job. You're stupid, go to school, like whatever that might look or sound like. And it made us like gritty, right? You stupid, go to school. You like that, don't you, Chris? Yeah. So like they're grit, like I'll show you, mom and dad, right? Like that kind of mentality. And it's detrimental to the millennials because then you get these kids and be like, I ain't going to be as hard as my parents were. And now you got a bunch of cupcakes out there, right?
Kids these days,
these bunch of softies. So, but I mean, it's a gritty generation, right? And that's another thing to hang your hat on. So, there is light at the end of the tunnel if you're Gen Xers, but you need to be disciplined. I really do. I mean, we've talked about it in so many shows, but it's about saving more. Being disciplined with your money. Like, if you can't, you don't have to have everything, right? Yep. It's nice to have everything, but you don't, because if you can look into procrastination, do not procrastinate on saving. You can't do it. Save as much as you can while you're working, because that runway will run out. You will come to the end of that runway, and then at that point, you need to you'll be looking yourself in the mirror. And I hope you made the right decisions.
Yep.
So,
the opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.